Dr. Victoria Mensch is the founder and CEO of Silicon Valley Executive Academy, where she helps executives and leadership teams navigate AI-driven transformation with clarity, confidence, and importantly, a deeply human-centered philosophy. Drawing on 25 years of global tech experience, a PhD in psychology, and an MBA from UC Berkeley, she designs immersive, science-backed programs that blend Silicon Valley innovation with sustainable, burnout-proof leadership. Sought after strategist, speaker, and artist, Victoria's work is grounded in a simple conviction. Sustainable success comes from aligning performance with purpose and innovation with humanity. There's a lot there, and I know I don't have you all day long. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me. It's very, very kind of you to give some time. And I've already enjoyed our conversation off camera. So I'm just going to dive straight in, really. And just for people perhaps meeting you for the first time, how would you describe what you do and what the purpose of Silicon Valley Executive Academy is?
First of all, Andrew, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here and be part of this conversation. When I tell people about Silicon Valley Executive Academy, we usually put at the center of it Silicon Valley Innovation Playbook. So
Okay.
they're something that Silicon Valley companies do that's very unique and allow them to be where they are, to innovate the way they are. So that's what we offer within our program. So you're not going to learn from me, you're going to learn from Silicon Valley. And there's the assumption here is that there is a playbook that can be replicated or used in other companies outside of Silicon Valley to innovate, to produce that innovation in a sustainable way, to be able to compete on innovation and grow.
And what do you think makes the way Silicon Valley individuals, companies, businesses unique from perhaps the way other companies approach things?
Well, I usually talk about four pillars within the Silicon Valley Innovation Playbook. The first one is obviously ecosystem. So Silicon Valley is not just a place, it's really an ecosystem of so many different players. And it's not like somebody came to Silicon Valley and said, well, now we're going to have this innovation ecosystem complex that's going to grow companies. There are a
Mhm.
variety of different factors that play to that. But at the end of the day, it is an ecosystem, so it's a just being able to be within that ecosystem and the density of that ecosystem with so many different players that support innovation, that's important. The second one, and I think that's really the mindset um, uh, that we are talking about, is really around taking
Yeah.
risks and managing those risks by um, turning failures into lessons. So that ability to not be afraid of failures is very important, and that's really critical within the innovation culture of the companies that we're talking about. The third one that's very close to celebrating failures, if you wish, really treating failures as lessons, is the culture that is biased toward action. And in practice, what it means is really running experiments. You're continuously running experiments, you're learning from those experiments, you're taking data from those experiments, and then you pivot within that. So that actually allows you to take action and not be um, buried under endless discussions and communications and consensus meetings. And the last one is really the openness, right? So this is it's not just an ecosystem; it's an open ecosystem. It's important that, to understand that innovation doesn't happen within one team or one organization. The openness for that to learn from other industries, from other companies, to collaborate with other companies, be it through partnerships, be it through exchange of the information. That's very important for that innovation spirit to grow and supply endless stream of new ideas.
Mm. It's really interesting what you say about almost a willingness and maybe even an expectation that a lot of things that are tried are not necessarily going to be successes or are going to fail. Because I think that's one of the things I found certainly in corporate real estate when I worked in that industry. Whilst the business will talk a lot about, we want to keep trying, we want to fail, and we move forward and stuff. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. Their idea of failure as well. We'll have a plan and we'll map it out and generate the revenue, and then we'll start investing in it. And he said, "Well, no, I just need 5 people to try this thing." Well, no, you can't have anybody until you've generated the revenue and you've brought money in. So this whole notion of actually being willing to fail is something that businesses talk about a lot, but actually in reality, it does seem to be very far removed from what try hard and fail fast really looks like. And I think that's why a lot of companies out of Silicon Valley, a lot of companies out of the US in particular, seem to be so successful. They're willing to try things and accept that things aren't, things like the Amazon phone. Who remembers that, for goodness sake? Things that have been tried and just didn't work. And so many businesses, leaders that are out there now have tried things, gone bust, and finally their third or fourth thing is the big thing that works. And I don't know whether that's a psychological trait, or it's once companies get to be public companies and shareholder demands or quarterly results. I wonder, why do you think more companies don't try more things?
Well, nobody wants to fail, right? So
No, of course.
nobody's taking on a project thinking, "Oh, I wish I failed so I can learn more," right? It's more of acceptance of that risk, that it's not a guarantee that this project is going to be successful. Now, there
Mm,
are several layers in what you said. Uh, Certainly, if you are a startup with nothing to lose, and that's where this is really coming from a startup culture. If you're a
yeah,
startup with nothing to lose, your risk level is your risk tolerance level is much higher, because if you don't try things, first of all, you can't lose much, but secondly,
yeah,
you certainly cannot succeed if you don't try things. Now, for larger companies, the stakes are much higher. They already have a business model that's working. They already found their ground. They already know what's working. They're already successful there. So now, when you try new things, there's always a danger that you can put what's working in at risk, right? So your risk level is much different from this startup um, culture. So there are ways, and it's beautifully actually expressed through the Innovator's Dilemma framework. I don't know if you've heard of this, but not to go too far off into the frameworks, that's to say, there is really a structure within the company that can be established to allow for those not so successful attempts, right?
mhm,
And that could be a smaller project. It could be you carve out a team and you shield it from the core business, and then you experiment that way. And then you actually establish steps to not only be able to fail, but to be able to learn from failures. That's a very important step that a lot of companies skip. Like, we tried, we failed, we dropped it and we moved on to something else. No, it only makes sense when you actually go back and you look at what failed, what did not work, and how can we do it differently.
mhm.
And the other step is that process of going back and looking at the failed attempt, it can be celebrated as well. Not the failure, but the fact of what we learn from that failure so that we can be better next time.
Mm. A great example of that is, a lot of people listening will have heard of the Nespresso brand. You think of Brad Pitt, George Clooney, sort of adverts and things. And Nespresso, it came out of the company Nestle, and they did exactly that. They sort of tried it, struggled with it, couldn't make it work, and eventually they carved out a completely separate team, put them in a different building, allowed them to dress differently, work their own hours, do whatever. And it was almost like they created this mini sort of startup within this huge, old, traditional company. And then it worked because it wasn't limited by the way the company had always worked. It was allowed to be different. And therefore, they created this thing in the same way a startup would. And I think that's just a good example of how exactly what you said just works. Being able to carve out something different, not be limited by current restrictions or strictures, but be able to do something that feels different and feels fairly innovative and unique. Um, you've spent quite a few years now at the sort of intersection of where global tech meets people, and a lot of what you do is around psychology, leadership, AI. And I wonder, what do you think it was that's perhaps pulled you more towards recognizing how important human-centered leadership is, rather than me focus purely on technical innovation?
Hmm. Well, I worked in high tech industry for a long time.
Yep.
And when you start talking to customers, and technology is always great, right? So you collect all these customer requirements and you build this beautiful product based on customer requirements, obviously based on your input as well and your vision. But at the end of the day, when you start talking to customers, the implementation part of that technology is usually um, not such a big a bottleneck as adoption of that technology within the organization. So we have so many technological tools, we have so many products, so many companies. At the end of the day, if people are not using that, that's actually not going to help the organization. It could be a beautiful automated workflow, but if it doesn't feel right for people who are going to use it, there are a lot of things that you really cannot build into the technology to allow for that adoption. And that's at the end of the day what
Mhm.
I figured out, and a lot of successful tech companies figure it out. At the end of the day, it really comes down to people. It comes down to people who are going to use that technology on the customer side. On the company side, it also comes down to people who are leading this effort. So it's not just your technology acumen that is going to make the project successful. It's actually your ability to sustain that pressure for innovation, your resilience, your ability to build teams, your ability to communicate your vision to the rest of the organization. That's what's going to make or break it.
One of the things you said there was about we sort of building technologies that people need, and I think one of the things that perhaps has changed in the last couple of decades is that a lot of things have been developed and are now part of our day to day lives that we many people never realized we actually did need. Did I ever know that I needed a device that could store 20,000 photographs or 100,000 songs or could connect me to everybody in the world? Did I ever know I needed that? And I think that's one of the big things I think has changed a lot in technology is that increasingly it's about developing devices and developing solutions we didn't know we actually needed. How does that differ from a typical innovation where we created something that people have demanded or asked for?
It's a fine line. Did you know that you needed 30 kinds of toothpaste? You didn't, right? So you
No,
have just
no.
one, right? So you have just
Yeah.
one need to, to keep your teeth healthy. You
Mm.
don't need so many flavors, right? So it's similar to that. So once you have it, then it's a different story. So that vision, from a technology perspective, is not that different from any other consumer product, I'd say. It's that vision that once I build it, they will come. Sometimes it works, and there's
Mhm.
an iterative process. If you're just building based on customer requirements. What was it? What's a quote? If Ford asked people what they want from a car, they would say a bigger horse, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
that's how it works. If you
Yeah.
look at the early innovation effort, we usually just replace what worked before. We just replace old processes the same way with a little bit more efficient one. But
Mhm.
where it's really going to make a difference is that transformation. So that's the mindset switch that we're talking about. Even in the context of artificial intelligence, a lot of effort that you see right now within the organizations is really about making things faster and cheaper. So we used to build all these Excel spreadsheets, let's say, right? So now we can do the same spreadsheets, but much faster with fewer resources. Then the question that you probably want to ask, do I need to build those Excel spreadsheets now that I have access to much more powerful technology? So, and that's a much harder conversation to have within the organization. So a lot of things that we're seeing in the AI areas that we're replacing what's easy to replace. Like for example, within the marketing, we're all really inundated with artificial intelligence generated content. There's
Yeah.
more and more noise, and it's not really good content. It's just there's more of it. The reason for that is that it's easy, right? So that the part that can be easily automated. You go to any AI tool. You write a simple prompt, it's going to spit out tons of content. It's not going to be super bad, but it's not going to be excellent. There's going to be a lot of it. Where, if you think of it, that's where human creativity should thrive, right? So that's where we could actually be, we can express new ideas. But we are within the marketing workflow, let's say, we're automating this piece because it's easy. And then humans are sitting there and cutting and piecing and cutting from one Excel sheet to another Excel sheet because that's the part that's really hard to automate. And nobody actually looked like, do I need to have that workflow? How can I transform that flow into something better? So,
Mm.
from a mindset shift perspective, this technology that we currently have, even in its mainset form, AI is going to keep developing and evolving in a much more powerful engine. Even in this nascent form, right? So there's still a question to be asked: how can I do it better? Not how I can do it cheaper and faster, how I can save money, but how can I do it better? Do I need to perform this activity altogether? Does this need to be automated? Or we have an opportunity to actually fundamentally look at the way how we can do things differently.
And that's a perfect description of one of my big concerns, I think, and I think that's what sort of seeing a lot is that companies are using AI to do things that already exist faster and cheaper. And of course, it can make those things faster and cheaper, but fundamentally, the output that a company is producing or creating doesn't seem to be evolving at the same rate. Like I say, is becoming faster and cheaper, which is fine. You hear CEOs say, "Oh, we can do research now and save 25% of our costs, and we can do this, and we can shave 50% off our marketing costs," which is fine. But all that's doing is in a way creating the bigger horse. That isn't creating the brand new amazing Ferrari or Lamborghini or flying car or whatever. It's just doing more of the same, really. And I think that is a big mindset shift that needs to happen, I think, in the industry. And are you confident that that will happen? That we will start to do things better and see new things and not just faster ways of doing things?
Well, there's a lot of voices that are advocating for that, right? So,
Yeah.
and it's a change is not easy. And if you look at everything that's happening within innovation and transformation, transformation has always been a difficult task within the organization. And we discussed a little bit in the beginning, right? Why is that? And there are
Mm.
more reasons that we can talk about here why it is so difficult to go through the transformation path rather than a cheaper cheaper and more paths, right? So
Mm.
there are definitely a lot of voices that are advocating for that. So I'm on the side of optimism, and I actually believe that this is a technology, is really transformative technology, AI technology, that allows us to make those choices, that allows us to make the choices toward better, toward transformation, toward um, putting higher um, higher standards in front of us on so many different levels. On the personal level, what is it
Mm.
that I want to contribute, how I want to contribute, how I see my value in the work that I am doing, how I see my contribution into myself, into my society, into my company. On the personal level, on the organizational level, how how we can instill that culture of transformation, how we can have those conversations, and how we can build them into the culture, and how we can make that mindset shift toward uh, you know toward not from the industrial, not toward the bigger industrial
Mm.
environment, but actually more meaningful
Mhm.
jobs and conversations and people being fulfilled in the job. And on the society level, right? So what is that value of human that we can perceive? So the automation can go both ways. It can go into the ways where we won't be able to compete with the productivity of the robots and artificial intelligence on the level of productivity the way we define right now. So as a society, though, we can reformulate what the productivity means, what the value means. So The technology is pretty much neutral. It's the choices that we're making, and certainly through the work that I'm doing and we're doing in the academy, and there are so many voices, um,
Mhm.
around that. I'm an optimist, and I think that as a society we have everything we need to make those choices.
We do. We do, don't we? We do. And one of the things that you've said before, and I guess your philosophy is that sustainable success comes from aligning performance with purpose and innovation with humanity. And I wondered if you could just explain a little bit about, in particular, what aligning performance with purpose looks like on a day-to-day basis.
When I work with executives,
Hmm.
especially when we start talking about executives who are under a lot of pressure, and certainly within the innovation environment, there is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Um, I think the path that we're taking is really to remind people that at the end of the day, it is a people-centric world, and you want to live in that people-centric world. So you cannot identify yourself with a job. I am not my job, right? And a lot of issues that we have, especially around burnout and the uh, performance related consequences of a burnout is with that. Like, we forget that we're not just our job, right? So we are multi-passionate human beings, and for us to be in harmony, there's so many different pieces that need to come together. Job is one of those pieces. Your financial security is another one. Your relationship with others is also a big portion of what makes you be in harmony with with work. Okay. Well, in harmony in general, right? And not kind of purpose driven, fulfilled state of mind. Um, so so um, so that even that switch to understand that for you to perform at the highest level, you want to have all these pieces, at least be aware of that all of them are contributing into making you feel fulfilled and have that purpose. So when we talk about performance, yes, there is a performance indicators within the company. There's the things that you want to hit, right, to
Hmm.
be successful within the company. On a personal level, though, um, especially with the demands of a current that we currently have, it's not possible to only be focused on that. So for you to continuously recharge your energy and be able to hit those KPIs and be able to perform within the company on the highest level, you want to look at for a personal level what it is that makes you you. What is it that recharges your energy? So it's not just outflow of energy, it's an inflow of energy. And that usually comes down to those pieces that we're talking about, that sense of purpose. So you actually, you went through the exercise and why am I doing this? What's important for me? Through your sense of community. So what are the relationships that are important around your sense of financial security, your vitality, right? So, which is your health and that sense of vitality. So that's really the key. So when the person comes to the program, they usually come with this the performance based ask, right? But we start talking about you really want to look at yourself as a holistic person, put your needs. Be aware of your needs, be understanding of what it is that makes you feel that vitality and energy and what builds your resilience. Is that
Mm.
answering your question?
No, absolutely, and it's interesting because a lot of time, whether it be on podcasts or in interviews or in articles, whatever, we tend to read or hear about people getting up at 4 a.m. and they're in the gym for half an hour, then they're on the email, then they're on the way to work in the car, they're doing emailing and on the phone and meeting, business lunch, business dinner, get home at 10 o'clock, then they meditate for an hour and then they do something else, then they go to bed. Oh my goodness, it just sounds so intense. And we don't hear enough about people recognizing the importance of, it's a perfect word to use, was harmony. And I don't know whether that's because there's almost this slightly masochistic trait where we've almost got to show how hard we're working and not realizing how important it is actually. And there's much more value in actually having more balance and more harmony and more fluidity to the things we're doing. And it is one of your hopes that people will start to talk more and communicate more about, as you said, it's not just about putting 20 hours into your company.
Mhm.
The benefit is going to come from elsewhere.
Yeah, so we have to. There's an epidemic of burnout throughout the world. So
Yeah.
it's not just Western countries. Actually, throughout the world, there's an epidemic of burnout, and it's not just through high performing individuals, right? So if you look at it on so many levels, if you look at the teenagers who go
Yeah.
through high school, right? So they're in burnout. So there's an epidemic of burnout, and the way to get out of it is really to understand, right? So there's so what would that a desired state would be. So we've been living with this myth is that if you hit certain milestones within
Mhm.
your life, um, you become successful, then the happiness comes. And now we know that that's not the case. A lot of people are just experiencing that. So, well, you promised me that nirvana, right? So if I go on a sort of good college, if I get a good job, if I buy a good car, if I get a house, and if I work 8 hours a week and I get that promotion, then I'll be happy. That's not how this works. So we really don't have any other choice but to look at those elements and redesign the way we approach uh, our lives, our mindset.
It's super interesting topic, and I think it's one of the things. It's almost how society has come to define what success is. I think a lot of it is down to, I guess, the ability we have now more than ever before to compare ourselves to other people. Whereas, only 50 years ago, we compared ourselves to our next door neighbor. Did they have a bigger car, better car? Oh, I want a better car. That was it. Whereas now we go on to social media or standard media, or whatever, and we see people that are achieving so much more than we are or being so much more successful without really knowing what the truth of the matter is. And I think that's one of the challenges maybe for my children. My son's 16, my daughter's 18, and trying to explain or communicate to them that your happiness is not going to come from how many hours you put at your desk or the job that you have. It's going to be about balancing everything else. So success is, as you said, success can't be earned by working harder. It's something quite different.
There's a how would I say it? So we're actually, I think, we are almost the first generation who is asking for happiness.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
So think about your parents and the parents of your parents. We are, I think, the first generation, or maybe second generation, that even have a capacity to uh, uh, to think that there is more to life than just survival, right? So there's definitely that. I think objectively, right? So there's definitely that trend that contributes as well. There's a clash of kind of values in the sense. So you were consumed with survival 40, 50 years ago, and now survival is really um, not the main uh, driver, but everything, including our nervous system, is still designed to optimize that, to really optimize your chances of survival, even though we don't really have a lot of life-threatening um,
Mm.
events, let's say, in our daily lives.
No, 100%. I always think of sort of satisfaction is expectation minus reality. So, and I think what's happened is, I don't think you put it perfectly. I look back to my grandparents. So both my grandfathers were coal miners in the north of England. Beth had her wife stayed at home and looked after the children. So they brought the money in every Friday night, handed over the waste packet to their partner, and went out to the local pub and had a drink, and that was it really. They were working to survive and surviving to live basically, and their thought of, but are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you excited? They wouldn't. It's not something they would comprehend because their expectation of what they should feel like what their life should be was much lower than our expectation. We have much higher expectations now. I think that's which is not a bad thing. You know, it's nice to be able to have nice things and do nice things and yeah, talk to good people and meet nice people and make good friends, all those sort of things. But I do think our expectation levels are so much higher, and then in reality, sometimes it doesn't quite hit those. Therefore, we're less satisfied, even though we've got much more than people had 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I almost and this is just kind of my thoughts on this, immediate thoughts on this. It's almost like an evolution, right? So what got us here is not what's going to get us to the next level. So that's kind of, but we don't have the tools yet,
Mm.
right? So we're
Mhm.
only now starting to learn what actually what makes us happy from a psychological point of view. From there's much more experiments that are being done. The research is being done what actually contributes into the sense of happiness, the feeling of happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment. Um, and that's kind of beyond just satisfying your basic needs for food and shelter. So
Mm.
we're learning much more in that, and then the environment actually allows to practice this as well. Um, so that's what I think that's what's different, right? That understanding that success does not success the way we define it right now does not automatically bring you happiness, right? So you can really decouple these things and enjoying the process, that process of reaching the success that actually can contribute into your happiness as well, and how you define your values, the way we talked about that it's not 80 hours of work, right? It's really what value you contribute to that, right? So how you delegate, how you set boundaries, how you get the awareness that there are more sides of you than just a job and a title, so that you take responsibilities on the personal level. You take personal self responsibility for designing your life this way. And it does not mean that you want less. It doesn't mean that you don't want success. You just want to understand those mechanisms that will allow you to actually enjoy that success and design the to take the agency over the way you design your life.
Hmm. One of the interesting things that I don't quite understand, and I'm sure you do, is that we have the ability today to be able to connect with people pretty much anywhere in the world at any time. You're in California, I'm in London. We're talking very easily. I can see you, you can see me. Yes, we couldn't shake hands at the beginning, but we're having a hopefully an enjoyable conversation. So we have this ability to be able to connect, but at the same time, a lot of people would recognize we're in it depends how you define it, a loneliness epidemic, where we're perhaps not able to connect with people, have relationships in real life. And I wondered, well, can you explain to me why that is? But sorry, but also, so do you think it's almost, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? We're given this ability to be able to connect and see each other and talk and chat and everything, but we're people are living in more single person households. People are perhaps having less relationships. People are perhaps being less intimate. Why do you think it is that this almost veneer of connectivity is masking this sort of loneliness that sits underneath? That's a big question. I did say at the beginning there were going to be big questions.
It is a very big question, and I certainly don't have an answer to that. Um, I can express my thoughts. Just came,
Mm.
as you were asking that question, And maybe we can tie that to the conversation that we had earlier about, uh, you know, uh, uh, more and cheaper
Yeah.
versus better, right? So the technology that allows us to talk, but there's definitely more connections that it can make, more surface connections, right? So you can see someone across the globe. You can send a connection request on Facebook or Instagram, and so on and so forth. So that's what actually changed. I think on the personal level, though, the level of connection that you physically can maintain on that deep level that you're talking about, I think that capacity didn't change. It's just that everything else increased. Like you can do more. You can do more surface level connections. You can have a better, not the better. You can have a larger network.
Yeah.
It's easier for you to get the information and to talk to more people. But our capacity to form deep connections on a deep level, that actually did not increase. So it's not like all of a sudden we became more lonely.
Hmm.
I don't have I don't have a data on this, right? That comparison data is like, 200 years ago, people thought that they are as connected and as intimate, as vulnerable, as deep connections that they could personally they could have to what we have now. I suspect that that could be a case that that capacity didn't really change. The capacity to connect in general on the surface level that increased, and that's what we perceive that discrepancy between. Well, how come it's so easy to maintain the network and to see what people are doing? How come we're not able to but maybe we're not meant to. That's what I'm trying to say. So, and there is actually, I read, and that might not something that we want to include in the as we're airing this episode, but I read recently there was a experiment, I think, from a physicist that was done where they were measuring the energy field around people, and
Hmm.
they managed to measure that when we're in person, this energy field is a physical energy field, right? So when we're in person, we're interacting on that level, and that's not necessarily possible in the virtual world. So your in-person connections are you provide you more information to actually connect deeper and decide whether this is something that um, mm, you want to maintain, or you're getting more information through that energy field in person than in the virtual environment. But you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say is that our capacity for deep connections, personal in-person connections around us stayed the same. It's our capacity to increase kind of our network in general is much bigger now. So that discrepancy between these two is what we're perceiving as that notion of loneliness and
Mm.
shallowness, I guess.
Mm. No, I 100% understand the experiment. So yeah, if I'm talking to somebody in person across a table in a restaurant, a bar, or a coffee shop, whatever, there's absolutely a sort of exchange of energy, and you can definitely feel it differently than you can when talking to somebody on the phone or via WhatsApp or whatever. I think one of the big things that's changed, I guess, in the last say 100 years, say 200 years, that people used to live in much smaller communities in villages, and the furthest you could go was how far your horse would take you. And you worked very locally. You were home at 5 o'clock, and the family always ate together. And there was no television, there was no radio to some extent. So everything you did was as a family. You got up when it was light, went to bed when it was dark, and that's so you were together much more. And you knew everybody in the village. Whereas now you can live on a street, and if you go to work at 7 in the morning, come home at 8 at night, you don't know who your neighbours are, for goodness sake. And then that's one of the challenges, that our working network has become much more global. Time zone differences. And I manage people in America or Australia or Europe, whatever. So of course I'm on the phone at 5 in the morning or sort of 10 at night and things. So I think that's changed a lot. It's just the fact that we now live much more globally,
Mhm.
because even though we might not be traveling in person, we're still traveling virtually and managing people. I've been expected to work with teams across the globe, which is a good thing. It's great to be. And
Mhm.
I've been lucky, like you, having worked in many different countries and spent time with people from different cultures and different environments, different backgrounds, which really has helped inform my knowledge base, I guess. And I did want to ask you about that. So you spent a lot of time and effort creating this global network across sort of 40 countries and more. And I wondered whether there were constants in what you see in good leaders across different countries. So you might have, yeah, a country that speaks a different language, different currency, different culture, whatever. But are there things that remain constant in terms of people that really do understand how to lead and guide and nurture teams?
So here's what I can tell you, right? So we
Mhm.
all know, like I know who I would like to work for. So I know what a good boss is. And
Yes.
you know who got what a good boss is. And the highest boss knows what, what a good boss is, right? So
Mhm.
that's and we know that we want support from that person. We know that we want that person to help you grow, right? So we know that we want that person to be um, emotionally stable. So there's an element of psychological safety there, right? So
Yeah.
we know what we want from that person. So, and that is almost universal. So, whoever you ask, they'll tell you who a good boss is. What would be a good leader? That what's that person they would love to work for? And the same way, on the leader side, we know what we want from people who work for us. And I'm saying we're talking about being proactive, being psychologically safe, being motivated, and being uh, kind of interesting, right? So that you could spend time together on long trips, and you have things to talk about. So those are the qualities that are more or less universal. And to answer your question, but it's very rare that we actually find people like that. So
Mm.
most of us would be lucky to have one good boss, one good manager in our life, right? So the
Mm.
person who supported them, who shielded them, in a sense, who they could trust, who
Mhm.
they could learn from, who they can, regard as a role model, who helped them grow, and so on and so forth. So we know what that leader is, uh, and we know that it's rare. But those, so we, and the reason why we really want to see that is because that person provides the best environment for us to do our best in this particular position, right? So that's really the key to that productivity that we're talking about, to growth and the vision, and pulling in the same direction, and creating something new and changing the world for the better, and so on and so forth. So that's when you see those qualities within leaders, right? That's when you know that it's not just someone who can get things done, but it's actually someone who can enhance the lives of people around him or her.
Yeah, it's funny just saying that. I immediately know who my person is. One person that I know more than yes, James Maddock. He might listen to this, might not, but yeah, it's one person I could just got so much from, and it's a nurturing environment. Yes, he was very challenging and it can be very demanding. It's not about a good man is not about somebody that's very soft, lets you do what
Mhm.
you want, not at all. But it's somebody that is almost has as much passion as you have for something. And you know that when you get to talk to them, you're both going to leave a meeting very passionate in a good way or a bad way. But I think there's definitely a lot of that. So how important do you think it is that, let me slightly rephrase that. So if you go into any bookshop now, you will see a whole section on leadership and managing and being the best boss, all those things. How important do you think it is that people are authentic leaders and not just leaders in a way they read in a book? Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes. So my point of view, again, going back to the artificial intelligence as a technology. So my point of view is that that technology seeping through into our work and life, that actually will make it almost mandatory for people to really look at their leadership skills differently. So the leading and managing is changing dramatically, right? So it's really, we've been talking about it for a long time, but now it's getting real. So what you need from a leader is not just to pass commands from, from the top to the bottom, right? It's
Mhm.
not like just orchestrate people around you. As when we're really talking about elevating those humanity, your human skills, and that's that empathy that we're talking about, just understanding why people on your team are working here, what it is that they want to achieve on a personal level, so that you can maximize that to really optimize kind of the work that you're doing. So we're talking about psychological safety, we're talking about motivation, we're talking about mentoring. So it's not really managing more, it's really more toward
Yeah.
mentoring. So those are the skills that will get elevated. There is actually early research that's being done right now that indicates that on the leadership perspective, so it's not just about consolidating numbers anymore and making decisions based on data, right? So that's becoming much more accessible, that the human judgment is what's going to make a difference, and that
Mm.
human judgment is really not just on the personal level, the human judgment, but also on your team level, how you manage your team. Now,
Mm.
if you look at the jobs and how the jobs are being reformulated, right? So humans are going to perform a higher level tasks. So it's not the you know just those tasks that can be automated will be automated. The tasks that are uniquely humans are higher level, right? So really relying on that human judgment. To manage people like that is a different task than to manage kind of people who are doing routine, repeatable tasks, right? So it's a different organizational structure, it's a different job roles. So from a future work perspective, there is a demand for leaders who are not, man, who are not just managing and again just passing through on the transactional level, are people who are actually um, able to motivate and build teams and provide that psychological safety so that they can um, really kind of orchestrate that human judgment that we're talking about, that provides the output that we're looking for.
And it's just so important. All the research that I've seen suggests that people will stay at a company for a year longer than they plan because of a good manager, and they'll leave the company a year sooner than they plan because of a bad manager. So, for even from a financial retention perspective, having good managers, leaders, motivators, nurturers is so important. But I think it's still a skill that a lot of companies don't necessarily recognize, and they make somebody a manager when they promote them, and they some people just some people some people just aren't very good managers. They might be amazing salespeople or amazing engineers, but actually, yeah, let them be amazing engineers, amazing salespeople. Don't make everybody have people in their team that they've got to manage, because it's hard. It's not their skill set. It's not going to benefit the people working with them. And I do think a lot of companies are still fixated on this. Yeah, once we promote you, you've got to have a team. You've got to have 10 direct reports or whatever. It
Yeah,
just
so there's
isn't a good thing.
definitely this hierarchical structure is definitely there, right? So you mostly what's rewarded is how many people you manage.
Yeah.
Um, though that can very well change quickly as well, especially if we're talking about AI agents entering the workforce as well. So it's not
Mm.
about how many people you manage, but how many agents and people you manage, and how you mix them together,
Yeah.
and how you actually orchestrate that, right? So but the path of management is the path that's uh, traditionally is rewarded more than the path of an expert. So, and
Mm.
that's actually a big problem for both employees and companies as well, because they're just a much greater number of people who really want to build their expertise, right, and be able to to be rewarded for that, and not necessarily build through the management path. It's like within the academic environment, for example, you can be professor, it can
Mm,
be on administration side.
mm.
So within academic environments, it's much more balanced path, but within the corporate environment, there's still there's still kind of unsolved problem. Um, how would you allow people to grow and be rewarded for um, being better and better at their job, and not necessarily for managing more and more people.
Yeah. It's something that it fascinates because I mean, just from my experience, I was and not. I don't want to sound arrogant. I'm not going to sound arrogant now, but my great skill, I think, was managing people, and my big focus was always to surround myself with amazing people that were far better than I was. I was never ever the smartest person in the room. If I was ever the smartest person in the room, I'd go and find a different room. That's just not. I would always want people around me, and my thought as a manager was bringing all these experts, and my job was just to keep away all the shit, all the nonsense from them, to
Right.
let them do what they do best. Just I'll deal with all that HR stuff, with the admin stuff, with the finance stuff. I'll create this umbrella. You guys can go and do your amazing stuff, and just leave all the nonsense to me. I actually enjoy the nonsense, but people that are expert coders, programmers, marketeers, finance people, whatever, they're great at what they do, and I just wanted to make sure they had the space to do that really, and not get bogged down by the nonsense. And I think a lot of companies give people a lot of nonsense. It's just not. I
That's true.
just don't need to do. I don't need to be dealing with expenses or signing this off or doing this nonsense. I can do a lot for you. Just go ahead and do this other stuff. Really, um, yeah. I'm a big advocate of managers just getting stuff out of the way of people that are doing things. Really,
Okay.
really managing. Well, one of the things you talk about, which I really like, is helping leaders become future ready. And we hear a lot about future proof and future ready. And I wonder, when you say future ready, how do you personally stay future ready? So intellectually, emotionally. So you're running a company, you're holding space for other people. Sorry, holding space for other people's stress and uncertainty. So you're having
Mhm.
to do a lot of stuff. So how do you personally ensure you're
Right.
continuing to
Yes.
show up and be future ready?
So a big element for me that was really a game changer was to realize that uncertainty is the way of life. That the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. So embracing that uncertainty and kind of understanding that this is not something I can control.
Mhm.
That was a big element for me. So I'm always open to do things differently, to do different things, to do things differently. And that's really a big element. And the same from my team, right? So we're always talking about what can we do differently, how it can be a different. So that's that element of being open to that uncertainty and embrace the uncertainty and understand that this is something that we cannot control. That's part of it. And then the next side is like, what is it that I can control?
Mm.
And I focus on that. What is it that I can control? I can't control how I show up. I can't control what kind of role model I am. I can't control the direction of my career. I can't control how I treat my people. I can't control how I feel, how I um, my level of energy, how I show up as the best I can every day. So those are the things that are important, and they're really about practice. So I practice this. I practice my micro joy, right? So I practice gratitude. I practice boundary setting. I practice, uh, y- you know, uh, uh, delegation. So this is really about practice and understanding that that's within my control. That's my agency. That's within my control. Does that
Mm.
answer your question?
It answers it wonderfully. So what brings you joy away from direct work, day-to-day work?
Yeah. So I actually have this practice. I call it the micro joy method.
Mm.
And this is something that I do religiously. And I advise other people to do that as well. To build a list of 20 things that bring you joy and make you happy. There is no other reason for any activity to be on that list, just to make you happy. Not because it provides return on investment, not because it's healthy, not because somebody said you should. The only reason, literally the only reason for things to exist on that list is to make you happy. And then you schedule three of those things every day and you do them. So they don't have to be big things. It could be small things. It could be, well, I have 5 minutes in the morning to make myself coffee and enjoy it in solitude, whatever it is for you. Or it could be a couple of minutes in the middle of the day to go outside and just enjoy the sun on my face. Or it could be read a book. Or it could be take a nap. There's small things, and then it grow into bigger things as well. So I can tell you right now, if you want, I encourage everyone to go through this exercise. And I can tell you how it happened to me. So when I first started building this list,
Mhm.
it took me 2 weeks. I stopped on number three and I said, I actually don't remember anymore what makes me happy. I don't know. I know what I should do. I know what other people expect from me. I know everything about everyone around. I just don't know
Mhm.
what makes me happy. So it takes time. So I went back and said, what made me happy when I was 16 years old? What made me happy when I was 7 years old? So that how this list expanded. But that's a practice that I do every day.
I love that. And do you get to all 20 things on the list in say a month's period?
Well, then you revise that list once in a while.
Okay.
But it's a lot of things. Like one of the things on my list was to start playing tennis again, right? So
Mhm.
that's not going to get off the list anytime soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue doing that. Um, so it's really up to you. For somebody, it could be, well, I really enjoy cruises, right? So like once a year, I'll get on the cruise to do that. But yeah, you revise that list once in a while. But it's really about that practice of prioritizing your joy, right? So it's just, it actually matters. Your joy matters. You're worth it. Your energy matters because that's what you're gonna give. Right? So that's how you return your energy back to me. That's how you return your agency back to you. How you return your identity back to you, and that's what you're actually going um, to provide as an outflow for people around you.
I am 100% doing this. I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much for that's just a wonderful idea, really. And I think one of the things you said, which really brought it home to me, said that if one of your things is enjoying a cup of coffee in solitude in the morning, and I think that's one of the things perhaps where I become a bit disconnected is that when I'm doing one thing, I'm always doing something else at the same time. So yes, I'd be having my coffee on my phone, listen to a podcast, typing something, and I wouldn't even
Hmm.
notice if the coffee was warm, cold, rancid, amazing, or. But I think
Yeah.
sometimes, but then the other day, I went to the local farmers market and bought some peaches, and I actually was outside and I just sat on this bench and ate this peach, and oh my goodness, it was like I'd never eaten a peach before. It was juicy and messy, but I was actually there in the moment. I was enjoying the taste and the feeling and the sensation. Whereas often I'll just be at home and I'm eating it and I'm not even sure what I'm eating, so I'm doing something else at the same time. So
Yeah.
I do think being what do they call
Autopilot.
it? Being
Mhm.
being present, being in the moment, whatever that
Yes.
is,
Hmm.
it's yeah, a really fabulous thing.
And you
You've been
remember it too, right? So you remember it too. So now it's
Absolutely,
like I
and I'm
remember
sharing it
how
with
happy I
you,
was in
and
that
yeah,
moment.
and you're feeling the experience as well a little bit, and it's yeah, absolutely. And it's not something I need to do every day. It's just yeah, almost those micro moments of joy and sort of creating those permanent memories. I think is really important. You've been very generous with your time. Just a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Um, one of the things I said at the beginning is that you're also an artist, and I wondered how the creative side of you came about? Was that something you've always had? Is the piece of art behind you one of yours? Because that's the first thing I noticed when I started talking to you. Is what? How does creativity flow through your life?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I was really into music. So I went to music school. I played piano. So that's part of my life. I still play piano, even though piano is not very um, comfortable instrument, right? So if you travel around, you can't really
Yeah,
take piano with you. So it's not the most the most convenient, but that's what I have. That's what I do. So that was part of me. And then I remember as I was turning 30, I went through that kind of crisis of meaning. What is it that I want? I'm turning 30. I haven't done anything with my life, and art was one of those. Yeah, so art was one of those uh, venues that helped me to bring that meaning back. Right, so that's
Mhm.
how I started painting. So that painting is mine, yes. And painting is one of those things on my list now. Right? I was struggling for a while. I was like, why am I doing this? There's no money in that. There's no return on investment in that. Right. And then once I started to put that list together and said, well, actually, the only value for me is that I really enjoy doing this. And yes, that's the creativity part, just for the sake of it, because this is part of me. This is something that's asking to come out, and that's value enough for me to enjoy this.
I always think it's such an amazing thing to do, to have literally a blank canvas or a lump of clay or whatever in front of you, and not to know how it's going to, what it's going to manifest, how it's going to behave, what it's going to become, and then you create something like the incredible piece of work behind you. It just, and that makes joy to other people. But seeing, and the colors are so sensational, and just yeah, that started with nothing, with a canvas and with whatever medium you use, with acrylics or whatever. It's like, and it suddenly becomes that. It's a really, because we don't do that much in life that is creating something physically. And
Hmm.
there's so much to be gained from doing something with our hands, because we were designed to do something with our hands, and we become very proficient typists. But it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same. But doing something like that, I think, is really powerful. And then my final question in this case. So I'm not sure how far you look ahead, or whether you manifest for the future. But do you have a feeling for what the next 5 years might look like for you, in a professional sense?
Well, we want to do more of what we're doing right now. So I think that
Yeah.
Silicon Valley Executive Academy is a great venue to to grow and learn in a different sense, because it's
Mhm.
experience based knowledge sharing. So on both sides, there are people who want to share their experience and people who want to learn from that experience, and that's in the context of the Silicon Valley Innovation Playbook. And I also believe that people who go through our programs, um, they um, uh, they come out on the other side with the inspiration to look at things differently, to change the environment around them for better, to change their companies for better, to change their careers for better. So that's the element that really brings joy into my life. So I hope to do more of this.
Hmm. No, it's something that I think is really needed, as we try and understand what society, life, etc., looks like with AI and innovation and everything else. And I think people that can talk to other people that have been there and done it, that have different ideas, different views, whatever. So yeah, and I highly encourage people to check out your website, because there's so much on there, and I'll put the links into the notes and stuff. But there's so much. You give away a lot on the website. That's not a critique, but you're very generous with what you give away. But I think it does just show that there is space for people to invest a little bit of time and energy to become better versions of what they already do and of who they already are. So thank you so much for your time. We went to lots of different places. I love the 20 things on my list, 3 things every day. Yeah, I'm gonna commit to having that sorted out by next week. I think I'll probably be like you. I'll probably either get to 5 and then think 20. She said 20, or I'll be like, "Oh," or I'll get like, I'll finally get to like 20. Oh, I've got 21. No, I've got 19. No, I've got 20. So yeah, yeah. I like the idea. I like the idea that you can change it. I don't have to
Okay,
keep it
that's right.
forever and a day the same
Exactly.
thing. So that's good. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I was happy to be here. Okay, thank you.